Moving on in histology, we need to cover the muscular tissues as well as the nervous tissue. So I'll start with muscles. All three of the different muscular tissues are very highly vascular. Well, you need a lot of blood because you need a lot of oxygen and nutrients for the muscles to work. Muscular contraction needs a lot of ATP, energy, which means you need a lot of oxygen and a lot of nutrients to make that energy. Well, what are the tissues doing? They're dealing with the body movements. Movement can be from the skeletal muscle, moving the actual limbs. Movement can be the cardiac muscle, causing the beating of the heart. Movement could be the smooth muscle, causing propulsion through the GI tract. So there's different types of movement depending on which type of muscular tissue you're looking at. But all of them are containing myofilaments. Now, myofilaments are going to be the small individual pieces inside the muscle cells. As I put down here, it brings movement or contraction. It's these myofilaments that will actually overlap and cause the contractions to occur. Now, the actual physiology of how that works, we'll get to later in the course when we get to the muscles, but for now, just know these myofilaments are present. The first one we'll move into is going to be skeletal muscle. Now, skeletal muscle is going to have long cylindrical fibers, the cells basically. You'll be able to see here that these individual pieces are going to be the nuclei. It's multinucleate. You're going to have all these nuclei that are combined into this one very long cell. You'll also notice these lines, these striations. Those striations are found in your skeletal muscles as well as the cardiac, but it's a good thing in the skeletal muscles. The function here is voluntary movement. You can think about moving a limb and then it moves. That's skeletal muscle. And as far as location, muscle attached to bone. So muscle attached to bone. Or simply name a muscle like the biceps brachii or the deltoid or the pectoralis major. That's your skeletal muscle. Your cardiac muscle now, in contrast, it's similar, but there are a few differences. You're going to have now branching tissue. You can notice how this tissue right here is branching. You also are now more uninucleates. You can be binucleates sometimes, but mostly uninucleates. You still have striations, but these large, very thick bands, those are called intercalated discs. The intercalated discs are where the two cells are meeting. So it's the formation where the two cells meet. Intercalated discs. Cardiac muscle, it's involuntary. You can't control the cardiac muscle. And where is it located? It's located in your heart. Cardiac muscle is only located in your heart. So for the skeletal muscle, we had striations, long cylindrical cells, multinucleates, voluntary, and muscle attached to bone. But now in cardiac, we still have striations. But now instead of long cylindrical, the cardiac has branching tissue. It's uninucleate now, as well as involuntary and intercalated discs. Location, heart. So both cardiac and skeletal have those striations. But in contrast, smooth muscle does not. This is the smooth muscle down here. The smooth muscle itself doesn't have any striations, so no striations. They're small spindle-shaped cells. They're uninucleate. They're involuntary. And typically, you're going to find these around hollow organs. Think around the stomach or around the intestines, around an artery, around the esophagus, around hollow organs. This is also involuntary. You can't all of a sudden say, oh, stomach contract more. It doesn't work that way. Just like the heart, you can't say, heart, speed up to 113 beats a minute. You can't just make it do that. Sure, you can influence both of these involuntary tissues, where with the heart, also you start exercising and force the heart rate higher, so you can control it that way. In the case of smooth muscle, you can eat something. Therefore, it forces the smooth muscle to transport that down. but there's no direct you can think about it and make it happen. So 3 different muscle tissues: skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and this one here is smooth muscle. Which moves us into our last category, the nervous tissue. Now this category is probably the easiest considering there's only one tissue to worry about. You're seeing it, nervous tissue. In the nervous tissue, you're going to have neurons. These large cells, those are the neurons in this nervous tissue. All the small little dots in here, those are going to be helper cells or glial cells, also known as neuroglia cells. Only the neurons carry impulses. Only the neurons carry the action potentials, those signals going through your body. All the rest of the cells are there as a helping, hence why they're called helper cells. All right, so what are you seeing here? We're seeing the actual cell body with a small nucleus inside. You're also then going to notice that you have branches coming off. These branches that come off, those are dendrites and axons. Those dendrites and axons are how the information comes in, dendrites, and axons how it goes out. So the information comes into the cell body on the dendrites and goes out of the cell body on the axon. Where do you find nervous tissue? Brain, spinal cord, inside your nerves. And what's the action or the function? Transmit signals, transmit action potentials, those signals. So that is your nervous tissue. Neurons, the big cells. Neuroglia are the helping cells or glial cells. But the neurons are what send the actual signals, those action potentials. Signals come in the dendrites, go out the axons. That is your nervous tissue. So now we've gone through all of these different tissues. We've gone through the epithelial, the connective, the muscular, and the nervous tissues. Each one has their own features as far as a category, but then each has their own subset of different types of tissues inside. Except nervous, that only has one tissue. But now it's time to work on finishing up the histology chapter.